Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Thursday, September 12th, 2013. Now tonight, we're going to look at the American regime's credibility. It's an absolute freefall. We've got the former leader of the KGB lecturing America about the rule of law and trying to stop the American regime from expanding the Middle East war into possibly a world war. We've got the former leader of the CIA being jeered and heckled. We've got Harry Reid wringing his hands about independent-minded congressmen, calling them anarchists. And although it's hardly news, we have yet another official being caught in a bold-faced lie, committing perjury to try to cover up criminal activity. That's with the IRS. Now, earlier today on the Alex Jones radio show, although we're not going to play it here on the Nightly News, Alex talked to the widow of Ibrahim Potashev. Now, if you remember, Ibrahim Potashev was taken into custody by the FBI to question him because he happened to know one of the patsies in the Boston bombing. He was shot in the heart 3 times, once in the liver and then in the back of the head. It was nothing but an execution. Clearly, from the wounds, it was an execution. This is the kind of regime we have in America now. This is the kind of criminals who are running our government. This is what we expect from a banana republic, an authoritarian regime. Don't tell me that if the FBI would do this to somebody and everybody knows that they killed this guy when they took him into questioning, don't tell me that they wouldn't kill a high-profile journalist and try to make it look like an accident. They tried to shut him up. They tried to intimidate other people, but all it's done is make us more angry. We've got people who are sick and tired of the lies. We're sick and tired of the corruption. We're sick and tired of the spying and the endless war, and this is what it looks like.
No. General Petraeus, you have always no more manslaughter right here. You just
Now, those are college students, but this is not like the Vietnam War. We've got middle-aged, middle-class people protesting the war. We've got Democrats, Republicans, Occupy Wall Streeters, Tea Party people who are protesting the banker bailouts and the NSA. We've got congressmen speaking out on both sides of the aisle, and we've got small businesses and unions who are angry about the service sector, part-time economy, and poverty that's being forced on us with Obamacare and other kinds of regulations coming from this regime. Look at what Harry Reid had to say. He's very upset. He's very upset about what's happening in Congress. He said, the anarchists have taken over. They've taken over in the House. Now they've taken over in the Senate. People who don't believe in government, and that's what the Tea Party's all about, he said, are winning, and that's a shame. No, Harry Reid is wrong about that, like he's wrong about so many things. The American people are not anti-government. They're anti-authoritarian government. They're anti-totalitarian government. They want a constitutional republic that respects their rights. And they're angry about the U.S. government supporting al-Qaeda. We've got people like Dennis Kucinich, former Democrat congressman. We've got a Republican Senator, Ted Cruz, both talking about how the U.S. is al-Qaeda's Air Force. Everyone knows that the American government is supporting al-Qaeda. At the same time, they're using it as an excuse to take away our long-fought civil liberties.
I'm Jakari Jackson with an InfoWars Nightly News Alert. We have a new article on Infowars.com. CIA begins delivering weapons to al-Qaeda in Syria. The United States has officially announced it is now delivering lethal aid to the rebels engaged in attacks against the Syrian government, according to the Washington Post. The Post reports shipments were previously stalled due to logistical challenges involved in delivering equipment in a war zone, and officials fears that any assistance could wind up in the hands of jihadists.
It's true that some of Assad's opponents are extremists. But al-Qaeda will only draw strength in a more chaotic Syria if people there see the world doing nothing to prevent innocent civilians from being gassed to death. The majority of the Syrian people and the Syrian opposition we work with just want to live in peace, with dignity and freedom.
So that was President Obama admitting that some of Assad's opposition are extremists, such as the Syrian rebels he provides weapons to. But in the defense of the president, he did say he would pursue political solutions after he's finished bombing Syria. Meanwhile, back here in the States, we have this. Felon charged with gun show sale to Austin officer. Prosecutors on Wednesday announced the arrest on a charge of being a felon in possession of a firearm. Rodriguez, on August 18th, allegedly sold a pistol to an undercover officer for $650. A search warrant carried out last week at the suspect's home led to the seizure of 76 firearms, including assault rifles, and also about $15,000. The article goes on to point out that Rodriguez had previously been in prison for the sale of firearms and also being in possession of a machine gun. So here in the States, if you exercise your Second Amendment rights, you get sent to prison. But if you arm Syrian rebels who behead Christians and burn churches, you're a Peace Prize winner. I'm Jakari Jackson, and this has been an InfoWars Nightly News Alert.
That's right. We can't expect the government to respect our rights and our liberties when they don't respect the lives and the rights of people abroad. This is a criminal regime, and it's not just going after made-up enemies in foreign countries like it did in Vietnam. No, they're coming after us now as well, and people understand that. Look at this quote from Bill Gertz. He quoted a U.S. official as stating, "We've come full circle from going after al-Qaeda to indirectly backing al-Qaeda." Everyone knows that's true, except perhaps Rachel Maddow. She still hasn't gotten the memo. Everyone else on both sides of the aisle, both parties, the entire public understands that we are now engaging and supporting al-Qaeda. At the same time, that's the excuse to take away our civil liberties. Look at what Putin said in his emergency warning to America. Now, certainly, I don't agree with a lot of what he said about the United Nations. I don't think that we should surrender our sovereignty to them. I don't think they're the ultimate legal authority. But he had a lot of things that were very true that he was saying about America, and everyone respects the fact that he's being upfront and talking about things in a way to try to create peace. And hopefully we can have peace and not make the war broader, not prolong it, not expand it into a broader war throughout the Middle East. This is what he says about false flags. He says, "No one doubts that poison gas was used in Syria, but there's every reason to believe that it was not used by the Syrian army, but by opposition forces to provoke intervention by their powerful foreign patrons, who would be siding with the fundamentalists." That would be us. That would be the American government. He then went on to talk about weapons of mass destruction and their proliferation. He said, "The world reacts by asking, if you can't count on international law, then you must find other ways to ensure your security. Thus, a growing number of countries seek to acquire weapons of mass destruction. This is logical. If you have a bomb, no one will touch you. We are left with talk of the need to strengthen non-proliferation, when in reality, this is being eroded." Exactly the opposite of what we're told. We're told that they've got to go in and take out weapons of mass destruction, but they understand that when Gaddafi gave up his weapons of mass destruction, they came after him. They understand the only way that they're safe is if they have some kind of a deterrent. And so it actually has exactly the opposite effect. It actually creates more proliferation of these kind of weapons of mass destruction. Then he talked about the failure of U.S. foreign policy. He said, "It's alarming that military intervention in internal conflicts in foreign countries has become commonplace for the United States. Is it in America's long-term interest? I doubt it. Millions around the world increasingly see America not as a model of democracy, but as relying solely on brute force, cobbling together coalitions under the slogan, 'You're either with us or against us.' But brute force has proved ineffective and pointless." And he gives examples of that. Now, of course, one reason the Obama administration, or I should say regime, was so anxious to get involved in yet another war was to cover up the scandals here at home. Remember the IRS scandal? We certainly do. And it is much broader, much more severe than anything that Nixon was impeached for. And he was impeached for using the IRS against political enemies. This is what Lois Lerner said a few months ago.
Members of this committee have accused me of providing false information when I responded to questions about the IRS processing of applications for tax exemption. I have not done anything wrong.
Well, eventually the truth comes out. She said that in hearings in May. But we learned today that emails in February of 2011, she advised her staff, she said counsel and her advisor, Judy Connell, need to be in on this, talking about the Tea Party audits. She said Cincy should not have these cases. That would be Cincinnati. Now, remember in May, the testimony from IRS Commissioner Stephen Miller was saying that this was just the work of two rogue employees in Cincinnati, and Ms. Lerner suggested that her office had been totally unaware of the pattern of targeting conservative Tea Party groups until she read about it in the newspaper. Finally, there's this admission in the emails. A Democrat senatorial campaign committee complained to the FEC that conservative groups like Crossroads GPS and Americans for Prosperity should be treated as political committees rather than 501c3-4s. She said, perhaps the FEC will save the day, she wrote back. There you go. That's the political targeting that they're looking at.